What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video, and today it's the Game Week 12 preview. So I put out a tweet earlier and a message on YouTube asking you for kind of ideas, topics and questions for this coming game week. So the likes of Leicester midfielders have come up. Obviously we know all about Jamie Vardy, but what about the midfielders? A lot of people thinking of maybe selling some big assets. Salah, Sterling, when should we do that? And obviously a look at captaincy as well. Just before we jump into all of that, I just wanted to talk about the sponsor for today's video. Kindly has been sponsored again by OneFootball. So if you want to check that out, it's completely free on iOS and Android devices. You can click the link in the description below or just search for OneFootball on the stores on those devices. Loads of footballing news, team news, all that kind of thing, as well as live scores and stuff on the weekend. Everything an FPL manager could want. It's completely free. Download it, check it out, and let me know what you think. Otherwise, let's jump into this video. So let's talk about Leicester midfielders first. We kind of touched on Leicester a little bit last week, but most of that was around Jamie Vardy. So this week's going to be specifically about the midfielders, because quite a few of you have asked about this. I think with their coming fixtures, obviously that's one of the reasons we're getting Jamie Vardy, because his fixtures are so good. Obviously the midfielders have the same fixtures. They're doing really well in general in the league, right up the table in kind of the top 4 position, and having a really good run so far this season, even though they've played some pretty tough opposition. So they've already played in the opening 11 games Wolves, Chelsea, Man United, Spurs and Liverpool, and have still done pretty well on the scoring goals front and obviously in general getting points on the board. So I think one thing to kind of look at, before we were maybe just looking at Maddison and Tielemans, obviously a lot of us started with Perez. Barnes then wasn't in the team, but that's kind of changed recently. We've kind of gone to like a more 4-1-4-1 formation, so Ndidi is kind of the lone central defensive midfielder. Then you've got Maddison and Tielemans just in front of him. Then you've got Perez and Barnes playing in the wide positions, which is pretty decent for them. So if they keep playing that, they should get a good enough minutes. Obviously, no matter what formation Leicester play, Maddison and Tielemans are going to be nailed. They could change to a 4-2-3-1, a 4-3-3, whatever it would be, you would expect those two players to play. They're kind of integral to that side behind the likes of Vardy and Soyuncu and Evans at the back. So in terms of nailed onness, I think you have to look at Maddison and Tielemans. I don't think many people could argue with that. When you look at the kind of underlying statistics and how well they've done recently, I looked at the last 4 game weeks. So Perez has actually had the most shots in the box out of all of them. He's had 6. The rest have had 4, I think. Maddison was 3. And then chances created, Maddison 10. You'd expect that. He's got all set pieces, very creative player. But Tielemans isn't far behind on 7, and considering he's not got set pieces to fall back on, that's pretty good versus the likes of Maddison. Obviously shots in the box decent as well. Barnes has also created 7 chances and only 2 for Perez, but Perez has had 2 big chances which the other ones haven't. And Perez has also had the most penalty area touches, which in some ways is good. He's obviously getting the ball a lot in the final third, getting plenty of the possession, you know, where you want him to be, right in front of goal. But the other kind of thing you could look at is he's taken too many touches in the box, and maybe that's not going to equate to points because he's just taking too long, going to get tackled, end up getting blocked or whatever. But he is getting the ball quite far forward, which is obviously good. For me, I think it's pretty close. I think Perez and Barnes, you're always going to have that worry that they're going to get benched or rotated or whatever it might be. Maybe the formation changes. The thing I like about Barnes, and I do have a bit of a soft spot for him, I owned him last season, is he's playing on the left. Obviously right footed, so he can cut inside and take shots. So that you see him do that quite a bit. He is pretty creative. 7 chances created is the same as Tielemans, and does like to take a shot as well. So you want to see him get in those shots closer to goal. But I think they will come, and I think he'll tick over for his price. Obviously he is a bit cheaper than the likes of Maddison as well. But if you want someone nailed on, and I think one thing I've kind of learnt this season so far is I've taken too many short-term punts. Players I know that I'm either going to want to get back, or that when I bring them in, I want to get rid of them after a couple of weeks. So I feel like if you're bringing in Leicester players, it's for their good run of fixtures right up until Christmas. You want to go for the ones that are completely nailed on. So that leaves it Maddison and Tielemans. I do think it's pretty close. Maddison probably just about takes it for me because he is on those set pieces. That can sometimes equal extra points or an extra chance of points. But when you watch them play, like from open play, they're always looking for that ball to Vardy. We saw against Crystal Palace, there was that ball around the back on the left from Maddison. There was one through the middle of the centre-backs from Tielemans, and both times didn't result in a goal, but on another day it might. So they're both good for assists, both like a shot. I don't think you can really go wrong with either one, but I think it's Maddison just for me. I do like Perez and Barnes, especially Barnes, but the nailed-on factor would do it for me. So I think Maddison. Let me know in the comments below which one you're going for, if any. So this is a strange week. I've talked about maybe selling Sterling, maybe Kevin De Bruyne. I've seen a lot of chat about that on Twitter as well. And people are looking at getting rid of players that they're maybe not quite sure whether they should or not. It doesn't necessarily have to be big hitters. but it does seem like Salah and Sterling are named quite a bit. And I think without trying to sit on the fence, there isn't necessarily 100% right or wrong reason. You've got to look at the whole overall picture. And sometimes you just get stuck with players. I've got that kind of problem at the moment. When there's players I know I need to get rid of, like I would like to do Salah to Mane, I need to get rid of Yarmolenko, I want Lundstrom, but I've also got more pay up front, I don't have Vardy, don't have Jimenez. So there's certain players you have to prioritise. Which ones are the most important ones? Like goalkeeper, for example. Nick Pope, yes, his goalkeeper's doing better, but their ceiling isn't very high, so they got to go down the list of priorities when it comes to making a transfer. So you've got to think about that. It's not always a case of, oh, this player's rubbish, I've got to get rid of him. There's lots of other factors that come into play in FPL. The calibre of the player is probably something you've got to consider. So, we're looking at maybe getting rid of the likes of Salah and Sterling. Salah especially has been a little bit off form. Sterling maybe not done quite as much as we would have liked at this point. Both players being outscored by Lundstrom. Obviously, they're still doing well. They're still right up there. But it has been frustrating, especially when Sterling started with a hat-trick. We expected massive things from him. And maybe that hasn't quite happened yet. But his points per game is still really good. So the calibre of those two players, you've got to ask yourself, are they going to go the rest of the season in this kind of, I wouldn't say they're doing awful. Like Sterling scored 2 weeks ago, for example. But you want to see a bit more of consistent returns from them. And do you expect that to continue? I would say probably not for either of them. Obviously, Salah's got a bit of an ankle problem, but he is playing in the Champions League tonight. I'm recording this while that game's on, so we'll have to see how he gets on in that one. So you've got to look into form as well. Both of them still taking plenty of shots, creating plenty of chances as well. And then you've also got to look at the fixtures. So if they've got the form and the fixtures to come, then you can maybe look at keeping them. So Liverpool have got some really nice fixtures coming up. Man City's a little bit mixed. They're okay. You've got Liverpool away, which is going to be tough. Chelsea at home, I think, is okay. Newcastle and Burnley away could be good, but we've seen Newcastle sit deep and defend in those games before. So you're just wondering whether Sterling's going to get too much from those kind of games. But you've also got to look at the fixtures they've just played as well. So sometimes a player is out of form because they've played the likes of Man City, they've played the likes of Liverpool, and you wouldn't expect too many points from there. So if the form's bad, but the fixtures have been bad, there might be a turnaround then. And in the same way, if they've just had good fixtures and they haven't done anything, you've got to look at the underlying stats. Did they play well and just maybe get a bit unlucky, or were they just rubbish, in which case it's probably time to get rid of them. So that's the kind of thing I would look at, but you've got to look at the overall pictures. The form of how they've been, the fixtures they've just had. If they had good fixtures, you'd expect a little bit of good form. And obviously eye test and actually watching the games helps as well, because sometimes the stats don't tell you the whole story. So in terms of Salah or Sterling, I do think it's difficult. I've got Salah, and would I switch to Mane right now for free? Probably would. He's just got a rest in the Champions League. But I do feel like the fixtures are coming. He's got that calibre where I expect points. He's doing pretty much as well as he's done in the last 2 seasons at this point in the season. So we could see an upwards trend. You've obviously got that ankle issue that hopefully is not too much of a problem for him. And Sterling, I feel like the fixtures aren't great, but they're not awful. He's still doing really well this season. I think he's got like a 6.5 points per game, and I would expect that to continue. So I think if you're someone that kind of lives in fear of not having these players, I would really worry about doing that, because every weekend is going to be super stressful, and you probably don't want that. But if you need the money like me, then I am thinking about taking Sterling out. And just remember, you can get these players back. So when to drop a player, there's loads of things you need to take into consideration, prioritise, look at form and fixtures and all that stuff, and then make a decision and hope it turns out to be the right one. So let's talk about captaincy for game week 12. I'm going to touch on some players I've not put on the screen, and I'm not going to give a huge amount of info about, and I'm going to say why that is as well. But you've got Man United first of all. I think after the Norwich game, people were kind of pretty happy with them. Then they played Bournemouth, and now it's suddenly sell, 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 don't buy them at all. I think the Norwich game was a good one. I think they give up a lot of chances, so that's really helpful. The Bournemouth game was awful kind of all round. I don't think either side played well. And obviously the weather had a big effect on that. Balls were getting pumped up. You couldn't tell where the ball was going to go. And overall, it was a pretty drab affair. And I don't think you can kind of maybe judge Man United attackers on how that game went. I think the Brighton at home is going to be a much bigger test for just how good they are. And obviously Martial, we've seen how good he is when he's in the team. He tends to get points all the time. So I think it would be a massive differential and a massive punt to go for Man United players this week. But you could look at that. Kane or Son against Sheffield United. We'll have to see what the issue is with Kane, whether he's going to play or not. Son has had his red card overturned after appealing. I'm just not sure you'd want to captain anyone against Sheffield United. I know Spurs are at home, but Sheffield United conceded so few goals this season. It's probably not the greatest option. And then Liverpool versus Man City is just not a fixture I'm going to go for For you guys, it really depends on whether you think the game is going to be open or not. We've seen these games early in the season, like last year, was quite tight. Could see a 0-0, and obviously that's not good for captaincy. Or it could be really open. If you think it's going to be open, you know, we've seen, I think, a 4-3 for this fixture before. It could be a good one to pick. I think I'd probably side with the likes of Mane at home rather than going for the away players or even Salah potentially in the form he's in at the moment. And if you think it's going to be open, then I think that's a fine fixture to go for. But it's just not one for me, just in case it's super tight. I think the biggest problem there is you don't know how the managers are going to be thinking. If Liverpool lose and suddenly the gap's only 3 points, if Man City go for it and then they lose, the gap's a huge 9 points. So they might just go tight, try not to lose the game. And you know, if they get a draw, they can try and get points in other games to kind of make up the gap or stay ahead. So that's not going to be one for me. So I think the top three for me then leaves Abraham, Vardy and Jimenez, which ironically is the front three that I may be looking at going this week, and I think it's going to become very template front three soon enough. So looking at those over the last 4 game weeks, they've got extremely similar underlying statistics, shots in the box, etc. are extremely similar. The only main difference is the expected goals for Jimenez is a little bit lower than Vardy and Abraham, but he has created 6 chances, Abraham only 3 and Vardy 1. So you're expecting goals from Vardy, whereas Jimenez might get you a goal and an assist potentially. Looking at opponents, Villa for Jimenez, 66 shots conceded in the last 4 game weeks. Now they have played Liverpool and City, and this is where you've got to look at the fixtures as well as the kind of form and the stats as well. But over the course of the season, they are right up there with the most shots conceded in the box. So while defensively, I think people would say they're probably doing okay, the underlying stats seem to tell a different story, and Jimenez could be a good option. I think Abraham and Vardy is where the two most popular captains will go this week. Palace are second for shots conceded in the box over the last 4 game weeks. Arsenal kind of middle of the road. The thing I like about Vardy versus Arsenal is that game's likely to be open. The Palace game wasn't really. They sat quite deep. They can defend well. Arsenal probably not so much. It's more likely to see them attack, which means Vardy's going to get space in behind. I've already talked about Maddison and Tielemans playing those balls in behind. So I think Vardy looks like probably the standout, but Abraham's not far behind. I just think the fact that Vardy's on penalties probably just swings it for him a little bit. No Europe to contend with as well, so fully rested for the next week. But almost a coin toss between Vardy and Abraham. I think Jimenez is a good option as well. I'm personally avoiding the Liverpool City match. That doesn't mean you have to. Just want to briefly talk about selling Man City players. Now, I know obviously this is very similar to when I talked about when do you sell a player. This is more like what you should be considering for these kind of players, like the likes of Sterling, De Bruyne. I feel like Sterling's the one that more people are talking about selling. Should you do it? Should there be concerns over doing it, etc.? So looking at the 2 players this season so far, Kevin De Bruyne is 7.4 points per game, obviously done really well, especially at home. Sterling not far behind on 6.5, so they're both doing really well. I'd say De Bruyne are probably not going to keep up 7.4 for the whole season. That probably will drop down. I don't see it dropping down enough where he's not excellent value at his price. Obviously, he's 2 million less than Sterling as well. I don't think I would do it if I was thinking that they're not going to score points. If I get rid of Sterling this week, I know he's going to score points. He's too good of a player. The question is, will he score enough points for it to matter? Especially if I'm not necessarily looking at captaining him. Now, if you look at the next kind of set of fixtures for Man City, like right up until game week 20, you've got Liverpool away, which is tough. Chelsea at home, and Newcastle away and Burnley away. Look, I don't think I would argue that they're awful fixtures for Man City, but I do think there'll be a reduction in goals there. Then you got Man United at home. Yes, Man United not getting too many results, but they're also not conceding too many goals. Arsenal away and Leicester at home. Look, Arsenal away, that could be an easy one for Man City. It could be completely open. Leicester at home could be a little bit tougher. So I don't think they're the worst fixtures in the world. I also don't think they're the greatest. They play Liverpool, Chelsea, Man United and Arsenal, so 4 of the top 6 from last year. And Leicester, who are currently top 4 as well. So they're pretty tricky. Will we see rotation over Christmas as well? Probably will, but I'd say that'll be the same for most teams. So I don't think that's a huge thing to take into consideration. But obviously, if Sterling misses one of the easier games, that's also a bit of a worry there. The main thing for me for Sterling is he's a lot of money, and I'm not going to captain him over those fixtures. So if I look at the 3 best ones, if I think that Chelsea at home, Newcastle away and Burnley away are good enough fixtures to maybe captain them in, and again, I probably wouldn't argue strongly that you shouldn't do that. For Chelsea at home, Brighton play Leicester, so Leicester's got, or Vardy's got Brighton away. Liverpool have got Palace away, tricky enough fixture, and Wolves have got Bournemouth away, so you could look at Jimenez there as well. So you might go for Man City because they got the home fixture, but Vardy, Salah, Mane and Jimenez as well have got decent enough fixtures. The Newcastle away game, again, we've seen Newcastle sit deep and defend pretty well in those kind of fixtures before. Vardy's got Everton at home, Salah and Mane have got Brighton at home, and Abraham has West Ham at home, so you could go for different captaincy there. Burnley away, Liverpool, obviously Mane and Salah again have Everton at home. Jimenez has got West Ham at home, obviously they're in awful form right now, I know that as a Diop owner. And Abraham's got Villa again, conceding a lot of shots. So if you're not worried about going for these different captains, which I don't think many of us are now, we've captained Abraham, a lot of people have captained Vardy already this season, then maybe now is the right time to get City players. I think, look, if you're one of those players that plays with a lot of fear, like I've done before, you know, getting rid of these players is scary. If you get a big haul, it can really hurt your weekend. If you can get over that fact and maybe put the money elsewhere, better value players, then overall it could work out better as long as you nail those captaincies. A lot of people also looking at getting rid of Sterling to go for a Salah Mane double up. I think that's a nice differential, to be honest, with the form that they've got going. It's just whether or not Salah can keep it up. You'd expect he will do. He's that kind of calibre of player. But he has been a bit worrying, you know, kind of on the eye test recently. Obviously, Mane is the best one. A double up though would be a bit of a differential. I don't think too many people are going that. So, should you get rid of Sterling and De Bruyne? That's obviously up to you. Few things to consider. For me, it's the lack of captaincy, the lot of money spent that I can maybe spend elsewhere, which is making me strongly consider doing it. So that's it for this video. Thanks very much for watching. As always, leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think of what I've said. Do you agree, disagree? What about Man City players? Can we really get rid of them? And Leicester midfielders, who are your favourite ones? If you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like. Subscribe if you're new around here. Hit that bell notification so you know when all the next videos are going live. There'll be a live stream tomorrow at 9 PM if you want to tune in for that as well. And lastly, if you've not already downloaded OneFootball, link is in the description below. Search for OneFootball on the iOS and Android stores. Completely free, no harm in giving it a go and seeing what you think. Otherwise, I will leave it there. I'll see you for the stream tomorrow. Catch you later.